nearby there. I thought it was his parish, but in fact, he's about 20 minutes from there. What's one of the miracle parishes. And so he comes from there, and it was from reading the Recusant of Greg Taylor and what's going on in the church, and talking to the society priests there in Poland, that he realized that this isn't, the new society is not where he wants to go to be a priest, because they're the liberalism. He's going to get away from the Novus Ordo, and they're saying the Novus Ordo is fine, and so on. He's still very much learning about the battle of fighting against the Novus Ordo. And so we're finding more and more people who, we just got a letter this last week, for instance, another lady who says, "You don't know me, but I know you. I've been watching your sermons, about the Eco sermons, for the last, over hundreds of your sermons over the last year or more. And I think I am one of your many flocks scattered throughout the world, who now I realize I must extricate myself from the Novus Ordo." She's never been to our masses ever. She never heard of Marches of Lefebvre until 3 years ago. She knows she was born after Vatican II, a mother with her children and so on, and that she said it started with a desire to wear a veil. She felt this desire to wear a veil. So she started putting a veil on. But she wanted to put a veil on and said, "No, I won't do that because that'll be drawing attention to myself, that'll be pride." So she went to a nursing home. She went to this old priest she used to go to confession to. And in the nursing home, the old priest says, "No, this is a right thing. You should wear a veil." So she did. So she wore the veil. And then one day, when she was after Mass, at the Novus Ordo Mass in the parish hall, whatever it was, the Novus Ordo priest came to her and said, "You're trying to be holy. Why are you trying to be better than everyone else? Why are you acting you're holier than thou?" He said, "I'm not trying to be better than everyone else. I'm trying to be just better than I was before." "Well, then why do you wear the veil?" He said, "Well, because of the real presence." And he said, "What's the real presence?" There was an older priest. It's not a young priest. It's an older priest. He said, "What's the real presence?" And so then she said, "Well, as time progresses, you realize now, and there are many like that, we have to get out of the Novus Ordo. We've got to get out of the Novus Ordo." And but we don't have a resistance mass near us. We don't have a mass to go to. I don't want to go to a compromised situation, indult mass, a fake traditional mass. I don't want to go to the real Catholic tradition, because the real answer is the whole Catholic faith. And I think what's happening is that many, many souls within the Novus Ordo, they're a minority, but there's a great number of them, many souls in the Novus Ordo, don't want the half solution of the indult. I remember back in the 90s, I used to ask every parishioner. We got many parishioners join us, the society, as soon as they opened an indult mass. Generally, in Denver, for instance, they opened indult mass, I think, in 1995 or 96. We grew, within 6 months, we started growing. Because they left the indult and came to us. And I asked them, "Why did you leave the indult?" They used to say, remember those Wendy's commercials back in the 90s? You said the reason, because where is the beef? Says, that I went to the indult mass and I was happy. I got Latin mass, I've got incense, I thought it was great. But then Father would say, "And the devil is bad, and the old mass is good, and the new mass says we're going to have a potluck on Sunday." We're going to have a potluck on Sunday. Whenever we would get to the point of new mass bad, get to the point Vatican II bad, get to the point Catholic faith is the only faith, they would say all the wonderful things leading up to that, followed by potluck on Sunday, new fundraiser from the diocese, and they would not say the conclusion. Because if they said the conclusion, they would get in trouble. And so that they said, "Well, they're not saying the truth. They're saying nice things. They're saying don't beat your wife too often. They're saying pay your taxes. They're saying be spiritual, be moral," which is a lot better than the regular Novus Ordo priest. They're even criticizing a lot of the abuses, which is nice. It's good to hear that. But then when they get to the actual punch, they don't punch. And so therefore, they left the Fraternity of St. Peter. They left and joined us. Biggest example was actually the Sunday in Phoenix. The very Sunday that St. Thomas Parish had the first indult mass. I was in Phoenix that Sunday. I was a pastor of Phoenix at the time, pastor of Phoenix and Denver. I was a superior in Phoenix. So it'll be 2001, 2002, 2003, one of those years. I think it's 2004 maybe. I think it was before that. Or maybe 2001, 2002. They set up an indult mass. And St. Thomas Parish was packed. In fact, many of our parishioners went there for the first mass. And I wasn't happy about it, but a good 20 or 30 of our parishioners from Our Lady of Sorrows in Phoenix went to the mass. In fact, some of our boys, they served the Mass. Told them not to do it, they did it. So they said, keep in mind, 20 or 30 of our people went to that Mass. The very Sunday that they opened the indult Mass, we grew. Not later, instantaneously. And then the people started coming from that parish to us. And the indult was a filter to send people to us. And what was the reason? Because they're not teaching the truth. Now we find ourselves 20 years later, that was in late 90s, early 2000s. Now we're 20 years later, and we're finding the same thing happen with the New Society of St. Pius X and the indult in general. There are people that come, I don't want to go to a place where they're just going to have a Latin Mass and they're just going to say nice words. I want to go to the whole truth. And it's becoming more and more apparent to souls throughout the whole world that we are, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and the priests that are with us, helping us, and teaching the same as us, we are preaching the truth of our Church of Lefebvre, the truth of the faith, and the others are not. And so they're coming to us. They're coming to us. And many of them we don't even know. Many of them we don't know. I get, there's several places I've been called to go to. I said I'm going to try to go there. I just can't just yet. Just not able to yet. And so it's also trying to find other priests to help out and cover some of those places. And so we find ourselves in a situation where the people are calling for the truth. So it's very possible. Hopefully, it handed out these several hundred flyers or a couple hundred people there today, including Cardinal Burke, if he was really there. I don't know if it really. I think that he may have misrecognized Bishop Schneider, thinking that he was Cardinal Burke. But he says no, for sure it was Cardinal Burke. We'll find out, I guess, if he was a mystery speaker there at the conference of Michael Matt, in which case we had Cardinal Burke and Bishop Schneider and that short bishop, and plus the Fraternity St. Peter priest, Institute of Christ King priest, and Society St. Pius priest, all together at this ecumenical gathering. I think what's unique about this particular one is the bishops are there. We've already had multiple ones of the priests, but this time the bishops are there. Just more members. You can say, well, you see, it's growing. Now we've got the bishops to come. And we got different bishops to come. Well, these bishops celebrate the new Mass. These bishops are a part of the Noble Social Church, and they don't believe that it's an evil church, and they're not going to condemn it. They just like Catholic tradition. It's just something that they prefer. And so that when we go to the Catholic faith and Catholic tradition, it's not because it's something that we prefer. We go to it because without it, we can't go to heaven. We go to it because it's the demand of Christ that we accept the whole Catholic tradition, the whole Catholic faith, not because it's something we prefer. And so we're seeing it in the last year and a half, I would say, especially this real development of souls turning all over the world, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, turning more. We want the truth, and the truth must be communicated openly. Even amongst the resistance, what do we have? There's about 100 of us priests that have been thrown out or set aside. And yet many of the priests, they refuse to have their sermons recorded. Remember, that's the one ancient thing that's been recorded for 2,000 years before they came up with the tape recorder. We have St. Anthony's sermons, we got St. Thomas Aquinas' sermons, we got the Sermon on the Mount of our Lord Jesus Christ, the sermons of the parables of Christ, we have the sermons of the saints. They wrote them down. Why? Because this is the way that we communicate the Catholic faith. It's a public communication of faith. And so sermons are not private things. And yet many priests now, from directives on high, have been told, keep your sermons private. Why do they do that? So they don't get in trouble. All right, so that they don't say, oh, I might have made a mistake. Well, anyone can make a mistake, but we're communicating the Catholic faith and the Catholic truth. And if you just make a mistake once in a while, well, that's okay. Everyone's going to make a mistake once in a while. But communicate the Catholic faith and the Catholic truth. This is what's needed to save the world today. Hasn't changed. And so many of the priests are trying to keep their sermons, their communications secret. For many, it's because they don't want people to know that they're sedevacantist. They don't want people to know that they approve of the new Mass in Vatican II. They want people to know that they're against Bishop Williamson's teaching because they might get in trouble, may not get sacraments anymore, may not get Holy Oils anymore, maybe persecuted, so that they'll just tell their own people secretly what their beliefs are, but not spread it. But what is necessary is that we have to spread. We're not yet in the time of persecution. The time of persecution may come and eat hay, but it's not today. When the time of persecution comes, then we'll have to sneak from house to house and say the Mass in people's houses privately. Oh, that's not that time. We're not in that time. And so we need to communicate openly the Holy Roman Catholic faith and spread it to souls for the salvation of souls. And this now is not happening in the majority of cases. And there are many priests who support us and do the same thing we're doing. They're just not quite as openly vocal, and that's fine. Not everybody can be in the same degree of exposure, so to speak. But there must be a communication of the divine truth, and it's not to keep it under a bushel. But there must be an open communication of the truth. And it is now an obvious fact, SSPX mainstream is no longer a communicator of the truth. It's not. And therefore it's leading souls away from the truth. It's joined the mush and the milieu, like Father Ringrose said back in 2012, it's become another Novus Ordo appendage. And we don't want to become another Novus Ordo appendage. It's a wart. You pop a wart. You remove it, and it is of no value to anyone, neither to the body nor to anyone else outside of the body. It's just useless. And so that's we become the traditional movement has become useless warts, So but so anyway, we have 17 seminarians that entered this year in Kentucky, and there's an Indian still trying to get his way over here. There's a couple of others that are trying to come, and then of course they won't all stay. Already one or two are in or have gone out, and then two others come, and so on and so forth. So, but altogether 17 have entered this year so far, and there's still maybe a couple more that are supposed to come. But we'll see what happens. But of course, obviously, it's not normal for them all to persevere. But the very fact that they're trying their vocation, the very fact that they're doing it in these trying circumstances, is a great miracle. It really is, and so it's very encouraging that they're trying it. Of course, you get the usual speech from me, idiots, losers, morons. That's the encouragement speech that they get. But at the same time, it's still a very encouraging that they're at least making that effort. They have a long ways to go, and some will be for the brotherhood, some for the priesthood. But we put them together in the same classes in the beginning. And so it's find to be very helpful doing that. So we'll continue that policy, and so they're doing well, and so we'll just take the battle one step at a time. We're going 1 week at a time. Meanwhile, the parishes continue. It's just a slow, steady kind of ongoing. There is a growth, but it's a very slow, steady kind of thing. And then there's especially, I think, growth on the outside. More and more people turning to us to hear the truth, and the reason is because there's a void. There's a void. You cannot find the truth being communicated openly elsewhere. It's just not, and that needs to change. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be true, and there has to be an application. What's the Vatican II problem in 2017? What's the Vatican II problem right now in our present situation within the Society of St. Pius X, within Catholic tradition? We can't talk about something that was a problem 50 years ago in the light of 50 years ago. We have to speak about it in the light of today. We can't tell people that Cardinal Bea is a bad man, don't trust him. He's already in hell. He's already been judged. We have to deal with the souls right now that are leading souls astray, such as Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, and unfortunately Cardinal Burke as well. He's leading souls in the wrong direction. He means well, he's got a good heart, but he's feeding the wrong medicine. And since he's feeding the wrong medicine, we have to tell sheep, don't take that medicine. It has poison in it. But there has to be a communication of the truths applied to today. The Doctrinal Declaration of 2012 is this theological stance of the SSPX today. And why is it that the Society of Priests participate with the approval of superiors in these ecumenical events? Because the Society holds ecumenism now, today. Therefore, it's got to be combated right now. And this isn't being done in the majority of cases. Many priests are against what Bishop Fillet is doing within the Society of St. Pius X. Many priests in the resistance are completely against what Bishop Williamson is doing, and against what Bishop Thomas Aquinas is doing as his henchman, and Bishop Four as the right arm and left arm smashers under Bishop Williamson. And they don't like it, but guess what? They're keeping their mouths shut. Only if you personally know them. If you're personally connected with them in some kind of way, then they're against it. And they secretly support what we're doing, but they say we don't want to be smashed, we don't want to be cut off. But we must decide, do we wish to be cut off by Christ and from Christ, or by his enemies and from his enemies. Being cut off from his enemies, that's a benefit. Being cut off from his enemies is a good thing. Being cut off from Christ is not an option. We have to repeat the words of Susanna. When Susanna said, if I do not do this thing, she was cast to commit the sin of adultery with the two old judges. If I do not do this thing, I shall not escape your hands. But if I do this thing, it is death to me. Notice her precise words. They said, if you do not lie with us, if you don't sleep with us, we will kill you. They used the word kill. She didn't hear the word kill. When she said, if I consent to this sin with you, I will not escape your hands. You'll be able to capture me. You'll be able to bring me to death, physical death. But if I do this thing, it's death to me. What death is she speaking about? The death of mortal sin. The being cut off from God. Being cut off from her husband. She loved her husband. She didn't want to be cut off from her husband. Being cut off from her children. Being cut off from her people. Being given a bad name and going to death as an adulteress. This was terrible. She didn't want that. But that's just the consequences of being put into the hands of wicked men. But to be cut off from Christ, that is death to me. We have to imitate Susanna. What is death to us? Is it death for us to be cut off from our paycheck? Is it death for us to be cut off from our association with our fellow priests? Is it death for us to be despised and spit upon? Or is it death to us to be cut off from the divine truth of our Lord Jesus Christ and from his gospel? That's what we have to decide. We've got to choose between one of those two deaths. And we have to choose as Susanna chose. And what happened to Susanna? A 12-year-old boy rose up in the crowd. And the 12-year-old boy, by the power of God, brought those two judges to death. And they received both deaths. They received the physical death that they had handed over to Susanna. They were stoned to death instead of her. And they received the eternal death that she would not give herself over to. And therefore they burn now in eternity in hell, besides the death that they received. And they thought it was a day of their victory. It was a day of their death. And then we don't know the day of the victory of Mary. But when it comes, it'll be a day like today. Let's just hope that we haven't made any foolish decisions on that day to change sides. So we can't do that,